Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hey, everybody, welcome to Soul Treks Nowhere Near Death. This is Ryan Graves. I'm with my sister today. Were you ready to start, Mend, or did you have anything you.
No, I'm ready to go whenever you are. Let's go.
Okay. Um, Today we're going to be talking about we've both suffered from mental disorders, illness, however you want to call it, really. Was kind of looking a couple of things up. I'm also a licensed and board certified coach and counselor. Um, Mindy's kind of run through the gambit. Mine was pretty simple, but it ended up with a comorbidity of basically drinking myself to death. Uh, but mental disorder versus mental illness, they're pretty interchangeable usually. And then you got what you call a syndrome. Now, a syndrome is usually something that, well, it's usually a group of mental disorders or illnesses that get delivered together. So how long have you been looking for treatment, and do you think they've got you dialed in now?
Well, let's see. I was first diagnosed, gosh, would have been 15, 16 years ago, right after I had gastric bypass. I went through some pretty intense side effects from the rapid weight loss that caused some pretty extreme mental distress, and I wound up at a doctor's office. And they diagnosed me pretty quickly with bipolar 1. Um,
With bipolar one?
with yes, bipolar 1,
Okay.
extreme. Yeah, when I went into the office, they said I was having an extreme manic episode.
Okay. But you didn't, it never went so far as to where it got like schizophrenic or anything like that, though, right?
Well, no, so I did have some progression. I was acutely medicated. I went through a series of, gosh, lots of different medications and dosages and things like that. And along the way, if if you don't learn how to deal with your mental health issues and your trauma, of course you continue to act those things out. So along the way, I was experiencing trauma again, and so the complex trauma on top of the medication and some things that I had received that weren't working right for me, I certainly did experience some pretty intense paranoid delusions, and in
Okay.
fact, some hallucinations for a brief period.
Wow. Okay. So you went about to that whole spectrum.
I did.
Okay. So from your standpoint, so depression never entered into that because I don't know why, but I was thinking that you
So
had.
it did. I've dealt with anxiety and depression since I was a kid. I just
Right.
didn't know what they were, and I wasn't diagnosed.
Well, and just so you know, a lot of times, and I'm going through my youth certification right now. A lot of times, what will end up showing up in a younger child is anxiety, and if it's not dealt with by the time they're around 14 or so, then it turns into depression.
Mm-hmm. That
So
makes
I
good
don't know if you,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah, unmanaged anxiety would cause so much stress on your system after a time. Like it seems to me that the natural progression of that would be depression.
right. And I think that also you kind of you just sort of look at the way that you feel all the time, and that's gotta be, that's gotta feel terrible as a teenager to think, what if this is gonna be all the time my whole life from here on out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and here's the thing. My mental health journey has been, it's been long and a bit sordid. And so I didn't find out until 2 or 3 years before I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 that as a child I was diagnosed with ADHD. I didn't know. And my
Like you
mom
were
thought that,
technically diagnosed, but oh, that's right, and she didn't tell you.
yeah, she thought that it would be, not a good thing. And back in the 70s when I was a kid, it would have been really hard. They would have put me in special ed. There would have been a lot of different treatment had I been diagnosed and put, into programs and that sort of thing. And my mom said, no, we're not doing that. And so she didn't tell me and she didn't tell anybody. And she just tried really, really hard to teach me how to cope.
Not really in defense, because I don't know what I would do, if I had been the adult, the parent back then, but they just didn't really diagnose. I mean, unless it was a severe, issues. They didn't really diagnose kids with any sort of disorder. So they just kind of always looked at it and said, "Oh, they're just being a kid."
Yeah, well, they were hesitant, and because things develop as children develop, right? They go through development and puberty eventually, and they say that's what they used to say people grow out of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes, those kinds of things can even out, but the truth is, the sooner we deal with them and the more we know about them, the more we're aware of them, clearly, the more we can build our toolbox to be able to deal with them.
Right.
So, yeah. But so, yeah, ADHD as a kid and then diagnosis bipolar about 10 years ago. Well, here's the thing. Now, or 15 years ago, even. Yeah, 15 years ago. About 5 years ago, I hooked up with a therapist, a really great therapist.
And by hooked up,
And
she doesn't mean dated. She means right.
oh, yeah, no, no, no. Like
Right.
no, absolutely a professional relationship with a therapist. And I learned about cognitive behavioral therapy as opposed to trauma therapy. And so she helped me a lot and she taught me a lot about it. And she's helped me to understand that most likely I don't have bipolar disorder. Most likely I had complex, unresolved childhood post traumatic stress.
PTSD. Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's what I was thinking, that you had trauma issues that caused some level of PTSD too. Um, because bipolar can be short lived, but usually that's due to something that is really traumatic
Hmm.
and, splinters things off. And if it lasts long enough, then you most likely are going to have to learn how to cope with it because it's never going away. But
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's
so
all,
speaking, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's all intertwined. They call it bipolar disorder. Is it ADHD? Is it trauma? We don't know because all of these things are all intertwined. Did my having ADHD cause me trauma as a child? Or how did I experience trauma and now I exhibit symptoms of ADHD? Right? I don't know.
Right. And like I said, most of it does start with some, which, if anybody doesn't know by now, ADHD is, in the anxiety spectrum. So is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is what I had. But, um, so, most of the time that is kind of the way that it comes off, unless there is some sort of a genetic issue like autism or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but would you say that some of, if not the majority of, you were born with, or do you think it was a complete creation of your environment?
I was definitely always a kid that was different. I am likely on the autism spectrum. Um, Also have a higher than average IQ. Um, much higher than average IQ. And all of those things combined just made me a very strange child. And I don't know. So I've always been different. I know that I was born different. What does that mean? Did I have mental health disorders when I was born? I don't know. I was different, and that differentness caused a lot of things in my life to happen. Some of them good, some of them bad, some of them absolutely traumatic.
Right.
So
And
it's
that's why we learn, coping mechanisms at an early age is really really important,
mm-hmm.
because as you know, and everybody else knows too, now that's ends up listening to this or downloading this. Mindy's my sister, so we grew up together. So she knows I had some similar things, very high IQ, OCD, not ADHD. But I just didn't care.
Yeah, and that was, I think, an essential difference between you and I. I cared way too much, and maybe it's a blessing, maybe it's not, but you didn't, and I think it allowed you a freedom that it didn't allow me.
Right, but it also kind of led me down the path that I ended up on too, and just not caring and not thinking that anything was wrong with me.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think you had less accountability for what it was worth when you were a kid. So
right.
I don't think that worked to your advantage in that instance. Yeah.
Yeah, I think some are caused or some are at least started back then, and that's why I'm really digging in deep into this as far as the youth counseling and coaching, because it's something that really needs to be, it needs to be noticed. It needs to be given its due attention. I believe it's 1 in 5 children, and when I say children, I mean we're talking the ages of like 4 and 12, have some sort of mental disorder, like a real one, you know,
Hmm.
not just a kid being a kid. And over 70% of them never get any help. So by the time they're 14 to 22, then, now it's going to compound itself, probably show up as something else and be much worse.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that for a minute because with children, like they experience all of these things and how they process these things is a matter of what they learn from the world around them.
Right.
So they're literally developing these neural pathways in their brains, and if
Hmm.
they haven't learned um, healthy ways to cope with the things that are hard, whatever that means, things that are difficult. If they haven't learned the healthy way to cope with those things, emotional regulation and those kinds of things, well, then they develop those bad habits. And the longer they go without treatment, without awareness of these problems, the more established those neural pathways become, and the harder they are to rewire when you get to the place of trying to heal.
Right. Well, and what's really scary about that too is the rate, and a lot of this stuff too, at least now, the massive increase and everything else is due to social media. Um, but you think about, because there are kids going in and attempting suicide at 6 years old,
Hmm.
multiple, like the numbers have over doubled in the last few years. And when a 6 or an 8 year old decides they want to kill themselves, they're probably going to try within the next 5 minutes, and nobody has any idea anything's even going on.
Hmm. Because of impulse control. Uh-huh.
Right.
And if we're not tuned in and we're not teaching the children how to recognize these things and how to cope with them when they strike so strong and so fast, that's the problem. That's where we're losing kids, and that's where uh, I mean, I feel like we talk about the number of children who are experiencing mental health issues. Let's talk about the number of people in the world in general that are experiencing mental health issues. This world that we live in is hard. It expects a lot, and you have to guess at a lot of it, and there is trauma that you literally experience on the daily and witness on the daily, and you just have to roll with and try to keep going. And so we develop all these crazy dysfunctional coping mechanisms, dissociation and substance abuse and all kinds of things, because we're not dealing with how to manage our emotions, how to manage what we think and how we feel about the world that we live in.
Right. And then, you have the stigma behind some of it too, depending on what, and if you make it to adulthood, what you do for a living and things like that. And then you've got the large group of people that ADHD, and believe it or not, ADHD and especially OCD are really rare to to correctly get diagnosed as having one of those. But how many times do you hear people say that this is my OCD kicking in, or this is my ADHD kicking in,
Uh-huh.
or whatever? And it's like, yeah, I don't think you know what it is.
Yeah, people understand
It's
like the
it's
basic
definitely not anything funny.
symptoms. Yeah, and they self-diagnose and they don't understand where it comes from or really, really what it
Right.
is.
Obsessive compulsive order disorder is often people have eccentric behavior and think that they're obsessive compulsive. I'm like, no,
Mm,
organize a room and about the seventh time when you have tears rolling down your face and you cannot stop. That's
right.
OCD and
Mm-hmm.
the intrusive thoughts and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and now a lot of the kids too, with their difficulty identifying as one sex or the other or one preference or the other. It's just, and a lot of that is just, it really is social media because they don't go out, they don't interact the same at all as we used to when we were kids. And so there's this big question hanging over their head because they never leave the house. They're always on a phone or an iPad or whatever. Um, and they'd never have that interaction, that normal interaction that we used to have. So that big question starts to grow, and the who am I? You know,
Yeah, I feel like that's another part of the progression of our society becoming so fragmented. Um, the relationships that we have over social media and digital things are not the same as
no, they're
in-person,
not.
face-to-face, touch human flesh relationships. They're not the same at all. It's not to say that they're not valuable. They absolutely can be valuable support systems. They can be amazing things, but it's not the same as interacting with someone daily in the flesh.
Not
And
even
so
close. I
it's,
mean, to even to the point where a developing child will secrete different and more and a much healthier um, have a much healthier brain response if their parent or guardian or whomever it is actually has conversation with them every day and makes sure that they make eye contact with them.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Their brain actually reacts differently, and it's what you call a normal or a comfortable enmeshment.
mm-hmm.
but but yeah, I mean, and that's because it's not on a screen. That just isn't normal. That's not what we were built for.
Human connection takes the literal energy that we exchange one form to another. I believe that.
Right.
It's part of what
So are
creates.
you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
So are you still seeing the same person that you were before?
I am. I am. They have been immensely helpful to me. I don't. I'm not on a regular weekly schedule anymore. We had a conversation about a year ago that I was maintaining really well. I had filled my mental and emotional health toolboxes with a great many tools, and that I had set myself up well with a good, really good support system full of many people who care a lot about me. And I just was maintaining really well. So now I just tend to call them when I'm having an issue, say, something I can't put down, or suddenly I find myself having insomnia and I don't know why. I'll call her up and we'll talk through. And she's just really good at okay, what's been going on? Where is it? Okay, let's talk about that and finding, just kind of chasing it down and finding whatever it is.
Have you figured out why the insomnia yet? Or
Insomnia for me is literally about unresolved issues. It's about
right.
not being able to put something down, being able to understand it well enough or accept it well enough to put it down.
You feel like it's going to be bigger if you go to sleep and wake up?
Um, I don't think that's the case with me. I don't think that's the case with me. I think I just have, it's part of that ADHD hyperfocus thing. If something's bothering me, I want to figure it out. I want to ferret it out and figure
Right.
the solution.
Yeah, I noticed the other day, which, where I stand on spirituality and things like that, because I've got all but no leftovers from the obsessive compulsive disorder
Hmm.
since I was born again. But I noticed the other night that I don't, and I can't believe it took me this long, but that I don't count anymore at all.
Oh,
I don't do it at all.
that's interesting. I'm a counter too. I think we've had this conversation throughout the years that we're both counters. We just count things. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That must be a huge relief to you to not
Oh, it's
have to count.
unbelievable. I used to get cramps because I'd have to move my feet in a certain way and count a certain way all night long, and I used to get cramps in my calves real bad. And the other day or the other night, I was laying in bed and I thought, I don't count anymore. I can't believe that I didn't notice it immediately.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Yeah. I know with me, it tends to come and go. If I, the more distress I'm in, the more I'm counting things, and the more I'm tapping my fingers and my toes to go along with it, right? The more at ease I am, the less I'm paying attention to those things.
Sure, yeah, and that's like that with OCD too. Yeah, you have triggers that make things a lot worse, and then you just have certain things that are just there all the time. But yeah, it's been amazing the how it's just a wispy little shadow of itself now.
That's amazing to me. That's wonderful news.
So did you I know that you did you ever feel like, and I am curious because I know with me I self-medicated, and that's what landed me in the hospital and everything. um I know that you smoked quite a bit. Do you feel like that was self-medication, and do you feel like it ever actually helped? With me, the alcohol did help.
Hmm. So I self medicated a lot. I started with alcohol when I was in college. Um, Before I was done with college, I had given myself alcohol poisoning 3 times.
Okay.
After I dropped out of college, I began hard drugs, and I spent about 15 years doing various forms of drinking and drugs and self medicating. And absolutely all of it was about self medicating, trying to manage mostly my anxiety, sometimes my depression, but on the daily, it was about my anxiety.
Right.
And did it help? Well, it would alleviate the symptoms of anxiety, yes.
Right.
Did it help my growth or healing or awareness or
No.
those
No,
things?
it's definitely not a long-term fix. I was just
No.
curious if you were chasing something or if it actually it was something you knew you could go to and that it would work.
Marijuana was the thing that ultimately really did work for me. I've
Okay.
tried and used many different drugs over the years, and that was the thing that I settled on for a long, long time.
Yeah, I remember having the first time I had more than 2 beers. I thought I had was experiencing some sort of an epiphany, some sort of just miracle happened, and I was just like, "Oh, you mean I don't have to I don't have to live like that all the time?"
Oh, that was absolutely my experience with marijuana. Alcohol, I would get blackout drunk, and I didn't really notice, right? And that was what I did from the moment I started drinking. But when somebody introduced marijuana to me, that was toward the end of my college career, and they went, your anxiety levels are off the charts, and you need to try this. And I went, I'll try anything, and I did, and immediately I went, what is this miracle? What is this miracle you have just given
Wow.
me?
Yeah, that's what I was curious about because you hear people say self-medication a lot, and I mean, but I really believe some people do. I mean, I found, and I had gone even then, though, they didn't diagnose me with obsessive compulsive until I started going to the hospital because of the liver issues,
Mm-hmm.
and they had um, therapists come in and talk to me, mainly
Mm-hmm.
because they were telling me I was going to die every other day, but and they couldn't figure out why I had no real reaction to it. But um, that's and then I started putting it together and I started looking it up and everything, and I thought, oh my gosh, this should have a picture of me next to the definition. But yeah, alcohol was it was amazing. It cured it. I mean, it caused other problems, but
Yeah. It cures the symptom, the worst symptom, the one that's making you crazy and not allowing you to function in your life. And
right,
it's amazing to me how, yeah, I was much better at functioning high than I could function with my anxiety.
right. And I was the same way. I was the same way. If I had left something undone or something that would trigger an obsessive compulsive, episode, then even on my way to work or on my way to go do something, even if I had was an hour into a 2 hour drive, I'd eventually have to turn around, and go back and fix it, or else I was not going to be able to function,
Hmm.
or I could have 2 beers.
Yeah, that. Um, yeah, I could either sit and continue to battle whatever was going on in my head, or I could smoke a joint and I'll be fine in 20 minutes.
Right. Oh boy,
And
yes. How many
function and get up
times?
and do all of the things, go to work, go to the store, handle my bills, all of the things that I can't do when my anxiety is in high gear.
Yeah, I wonder how bad it would have been if I had found something else that wasn't legal and on every street corner, because it was easy for me to get my medication. All I needed was $10, and usually it was within walking distance if I needed to be.
Hmm.
So, do you think that there'll ever be a time where you're not dealing with it, where it's pretty well cured? You said you're down to only having to call if there's a possible episode or an episode happening.
So, do I think that there will ever be a time that I'm not having episodes? No. No. I have serious triggers, and I have and my brain just works different than other people's brains, and
Right.
sometimes it just is like I don't know, it's like a train wreck happens, and so do I think that will ever not happen to me? No. I think that I'll deal with that my whole life. Do I think that I will get good enough at coping with the fallout when those things happen to not need a therapist? Sure. Yeah, I think that day will come. In fact, I think that day's coming very soon for me.
Good.
Yeah. I'm looking actually, I've been working with a life coach as well, which
Hmm.
is good. To me, it's a good transition. I went from trauma therapy kept me in the past, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy centered me in the present and made me aware of my issues and my emotions and my thoughts and all of those things. And has helped me learn how to cope with them. Life coaching is going to help me take the steps forward to thrive, to make to not just cope, but to be able to manage bigger and better things in my life, to be able to help other people, to suddenly step outside of myself and stop just managing my issues and my symptoms, and be able to affect the world around me in the way that I want to.
Right. Yeah, from my standpoint too, I have changed some of the verbiage on some of my things, and um, I realize that most of my training's for mental health and addiction recovery and things like that. But it's almost more satisfying being a coach than it is the counselor.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
and that's kind of what I where I want to be too, is bringing people along. So, but how was Christmas?
Christmas was good. We had a really nice Christmas, small Christmas with Matt's family, and they do a really good job of keeping it meaningful and not too much, which is perfect balance for me.
Keeping it meaningful, but not too much Christianity.
No, not too much. No, they're actually not Christian either, but just not too
Oh,
much activity, not too much up and down, not too big. Just keep it nice and peaceful and mellow and centered around the right things, which are gratitude and family and love and those kinds of things.
are there any little kids on the on his side?
So not yet, but they do have a brand new baby just announced due in April.
Okay, see, that's part of the reason right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're excited for baby Evelyn. She's the first grandbaby in this generation, so we're super excited.
Well, I'm still looking on doing my little mission trip. Just had some setbacks. Started to develop. I'll store up ammonia, and it's part of the reason some of the medication that I'm for some of the medication that I'm on. But boy, you talk about crazy. That's really strange.
You mean like the ammonia builds up in your system?
You don't know. You don't remember anything. You don't know. I would like put clothes on backwards, and I probably shouldn't be saying this because I'm trying to get clients too. But but yeah, you put clothes on backwards, just go stand in the corner and stare at the wall, and everybody around's going, "What are you doing?"
hmm
So what's happening?
Well,
Look around and go, "What am I doing standing here?"
hmm yeah. Well, and it's that thing where it's important to surround yourself with the people who do go, "Hey, what are you doing?" So you can be aware, right? Because when stuff like that happens,
Sure,
clearly something's wrong. Your brain's not working right.
right. Well, I think we got it pretty well, you know, pretty well dialed in. So it's just getting some things, so a few more things put in place. And so the reason I was saying that is I definitely want to come down to Tulsa first before I end up going to Texas.
hmm We would
So
absolutely love to have you here for a visit.
okay. Yeah, and if you know anybody that is looking for a coach, yes, I am very faith based, very Christian based, but it doesn't have to revolve around that only.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get some cards made up here pretty quick, and I've got the website up. It's probably about 60 or 70%, but they can still click on the discovery call on there and just schedule one. If my calendar's open, they can schedule a call. I'll get an email and I can talk to them and see what it is they're wanting to do. So, and my website is the Soul Trek. So it's TheSoulTrek.com, thesoultrek.com.
Okay.
So,
That's amazing. I think that's awesome. And we may not share faith, but I have Christian friends. I love you.
yeah, I'm gonna start another group at the church before I leave. Wow, you talk about something that swept me off my feet. I mean, I went to that church, and within 5 weeks, I was leading the Bible study group. I'm an ordained minister. I minister to the prisoners in Lansing, Kansas.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I love it. It's my life. I'm on my second full reading of the Bible, and I've enrolled in um, a pastoral, uh, commission pastoral program right now too. So I'll be ordained again, but it's just going to be with a little bit more. It's a little bit more of a strenuous curriculum than I initially did, but I absolutely love it.
I think
So
it's amazing, and I'm really glad that you have found your path and that you have found a purpose. I can tell the huge difference that it has made for you, mentally and emotionally. Like, and
I know
physically.
when
I mean,
I
let's be real. I think it's really affected your healing journey as well.
affected what?
Your healing journey.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and when I came out, like I said, when I was born again, I mean, it's pretty much a supernatural changing in your lifestyle and everything else. I don't watch the same movies. I don't cuss. I don't. I mean, and it's just those things just don't appeal to me. The same things. Everything looks different. It's like having brand new eyes. But so as far as like even with the alcoholism, I don't want to drink. I haven't wanted one. The 22nd was my 1 year, and I almost forgot. Most people sit there and stare at the clock and wait for that to come up because it's a huge milestone. And I really almost forgot because I don't even think about it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it's a thing. At some point, you, if you want to get better, it's like your focus shifts, and the things that are not good for you start to fall away, and you start to fill your time and your mind and your energy and your love with all of the things that nurture and make those things feel bigger and better. So I really am glad, for
thank you.
myself to have, yeah, to have found that
And
and
you.
you to have found it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm super happy for you. I didn't know that you were down to just as a on a as needed
Yeah.
situation now. So that's great.
Well, and sometimes it's that thing where it's humbling to be reminded, last January I went, okay, I graduated therapy, yay, right? I got all giddy. And then it wasn't March before I was dealing with something that I was like, oh, I really could use my talk with Allison. Like, I really need to talk to Allison, but
You
does
think
that
it
mean
was
that I
just habitual though?
does that mean that I failed? Do I think it was habitual? No. I think that it's really important, whether it's a therapist or a good friend that you really trust. I don't know, but everybody needs somebody outside of their brain to bounce things off of.
Right.
We all get caught up in the whys and the wherefores and the what's good for us, and all of that stuff sometimes. And sometimes you just need somebody outside of your brain.
I know nobody can keep up with me.
Yeah.
You're not around and you're the closest. So,
Yeah, yeah, I know. I feel that. I do. I have said many times in my life, man, if my brother and I could have managed to land in the same place even once for a while, I think we would have been a pair to be reckoned with.
right. Well, did you want to go ahead and wrap it up tonight? And might do it again, but I hadn't done one in a little bit, and figured I'd have a chat with you, let you see what it was all about too. And I'm gonna try to start doing 2 or 3 of these a week. So
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed this a lot, actually. I like the exposure. I like being able to just share my experience. I feel like the more I share, the more people hear, the more they know it's okay. They know it's okay to struggle. They know it's okay to find their own way. I just feel like that's the
absolutely,
most important thing. We gotta remind each other that human connection is where it's at, and that's the thing that heals us.
boy, it sure is. It just really is unfortunate the way that things are now. People can't tell their kids no, and their kids don't realize how much damage is being done by living on in a virtual world. But I mean, the numbers on just about everything are staggeringly bad. After if a person spends an average of 2 hours a day, which I spend a lot of time on social media now, but mostly that's for the things that I'm doing. So it's part of work too. Um, but yeah, if that's their life, then there's a good chance that if they didn't have a problem to start with, they're getting ready to have one.
Yeah. Well, yes. social media has so many things thrown in. It's programmed to be manipulative. It's
And it's
it's
worse for girls than it is boys too.
I, oh, is it? I don't know. I just know it's
Yeah,
terrible all the way around.
because that's why all the filters and the way the girl stands and the this and that, and none of them actually look like their picture,
Mm,
and
yeah.
everybody's trying to fake this perfect life outwardly on social media when it's nothing like what their life is like in reality.
Well, and how damaging is that to think that the only thing that matters or that is important is this image that you put forward to people that don't even know you.
Exactly, and in the counseling world, we call it having to build avatars. One for the your reality issues that you deal with, one for outward, one for social media, one for this, one for that, and they never really come together. So people end up very splintered.
Hmm. Wow, that's an interesting concept. I
You want to
certainly
know something that I
certainly.
heard the other day? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, you go ahead. What'd you hear?
Um, well, the likelihood a lot of times for females now, first of all, the whole women's liberation movements and things like that, and the likelihood of women to go after men who are a little bit effeminate or a little less assertive, and being a real man's man is not as attractive and things like that as it used to be, with the Marlboro Man and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, Never would have put this together, but I was watching something with Jordan Peterson, and he had this PhD, this doctor on. I think he's a PhD also, but um, that they had started doing studies a while back, and they've done a ton now to definitively say that it all coincides with chemical birth control pills
That's interesting.
because it changed the whole. It changed the way a woman's hormones work. So yeah,
Hmm.
I know. And I was like, you know what? I bet you that. I mean, I'm not sure to what degree, but I bet you that did have something to do with it.
That's an interesting concept. I'm sure there are a lot of factors that go into, it's not just a matter socially. Things change over time. Different things are in vogue. Sometimes
Right.
it's more attractive for people to be large and loud and take up space, and sometimes it's more attractive for them to be tiny and quiet.
But a
Um,
lot of times, too, that'll cause a woman will cheat on their husband if he's not the manly man and they come off of birth control or whatever and they have their normal cycle, then their influx of estrogen and things like that during that period of time make them want somebody that's nothing like who they married. Isn't that crazy?
yeah, yeah. That sounds a little. I don't know. I don't understand what cheating has to do with it. Like cheating's a choice you make regardless of
No,
what.
I understand where you're coming from, but therein lies also a question of morality too. But
Mhm.
um, I'm saying that during the times that their hormones were going haywire, and maybe they hadn't for 20 years because they'd been on, you
Mhm.
know, chemical birth control, then they tend to get themselves in trouble. I don't know. I just know that I saw that caught my attention the other day, and I thought, well, I'll bet you that did change society as a whole.
I could absolutely see where altering a woman's hormonal makeup for decades,
Exactly.
yes, could change the way that she felt about things or reacted towards things, especially things that are affected by hormones,
Right.
which is, honestly, really everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and wrap it up. I'm going to see what this sounds like too and see what all options I have before I cancel this subscription if I do.
Okay.
So, in order to bring the sound all up to where it sounds good. So,
Hmm. Okay.
but yeah, I will, yeah, we'll talk and maybe get another one set up if you want to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I enjoyed this very much. Thank you for
Okay.
inviting.
Oh, absolutely, Mendy. I enjoyed it as well. All right, guys, this has been Ryan Graves and Mindy Kellner with Soultrex Nowhere Near Death, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.